What's up, everyone? Brady Figuel here, coming at you with an album review of the new In Heart's Wake album, Incarnation. It was released about 2 weeks ago now, Friday, July 12th. It's these guys' sixth studio album now. They kind of came out in that second wave of metalcore in the early 2010s. And honestly, they haven't really done much, in my opinion, to separate themselves from all the other bands around that time. And that's not to say any of their music is bad. I don't think they've necessarily put out a bad album. Their albums, their last few albums in particular, have just sounded a bit generic. So now with this record, their first album in 4 years, I was kind of hoping they'd get a bit more reinvigorated and have a bit more ambition and clear inspiration in their songs. Right off the gate, the first track on here, Spitting Nails, gets the album off to definitely a very aggressive start. Definitely gives this album an edge right out of the gates. But I do kind of wish this song was a bit more interesting. I wish they kind of had a bit more ambition with an aggressive opening track. For me, the opening track, despite its definite aggression, it doesn't have very memorable riffing. It has kind of an underwhelming breakdown around the 1 minute 45 second mark. But it's overall not a bad song. I like how it kind of ends on those more dissonant style notes, and it definitely gets the album off to an aggressive start, like I mentioned. I just wish they did it in a bit more of an original way. Like, to me, this album opener sounds like the album opener to like a Beartooth album or a Wage War album, where this song would probably be like the heaviest song on a record by either of those bands. Luckily here, though, that's not the case. The next track, Hollow Bone, is one that's definitely pretty heavy and definitely a step up from Spitting Nails. A much better intro riff, a much better breakdown, and a kind of like half screamed, half clean chorus that actually pushes forward the momentum of the song. And this song does like propel the album forward more. It keeps that energy going and improves on some of my criticisms from the first track. But now at this point, what I want is a bit of structural diversity, because when you look at the song structures of these first two songs, they're almost identical. I'm talking the verse, chorus, you get a breakdown, a call out breakdown in the bridge, which, like I mentioned earlier, is kind of a generic song formula for a modern metalcore band to use. That being said, though, it doesn't really become an issue until it gets repeated over and over on the majority or sometimes all of the songs. And at this point on the album, that obviously hasn't happened yet 2 songs in. And thankfully, the next track, The Flood, is a huge breath of fresh air. Not only is it way heavier than the first 2 songs, but it is structurally different. It features Winston McCall of Parkway Drive, who has a great vocal performance on this song. And the song has a great contrast between the blistering heavy sections and the more ambient electronic parts at times, which aren't overused. The breakdown on this song is great, how you kind of get that electronic transmission thing, which is kind of a hit or miss thing for me, but I think they pull it off pretty well here. And then you kick into that breakdown, it's got this pounding snare drum that really drives it forward. I really think this part adds to the song. And the momentum continues with the next track, Orphan, which brings in some blatant like industrial metal and nu metal influence, while also having some of the most prominent hardcore influence on the entire record. Like, the contrast between the kind of computerized electronic industrial parts and those nasty hardcore sounding guitars is great. The riffing on the song is super groovy and bendy. The vocal cadences are super catchy. And the way the song just weaves in and out of those different influences, it's so smooth. And again, it's super fucking heavy, way heavier than the first 2 tracks, even with those more quiet parts. So at this point of the album, my optimism really starts to grow, because despite the somewhat spotty first 2 songs, they really make up for it with tracks 3 and 4. And the next track, Gen Doom, kind of follows in that same lane as Orphan did. And I think this is a good song too. It adds a bit more of ambiance to this formula, which then makes it separate itself from Orphan, which the last thing this album needs right now is to start getting repetitive. And this song is a good balance of familiarity at this point in the record with still some more add-ons and some more experimenting. It also has a very smooth transition between the heavier parts and, again, the calmer parts. Near the end of the song, you get a cool breakdown where they really make use of dissonance in the form of just, again, dissonant chords, but also lots of use of harmonics. The intro riff to the next song, Shishigami, is pretty cool. It kind of has a triplet drive to it, which I thought was cool. It gives the song kind of an off-tempo bounce almost. And there's also some really cool chord progressions in this song that I really like. That fittingly, slightly Eastern influenced little guitar lick just after the 1 minute 25 mark I think is really cool. The breakdown on the song is really cool as well. It brings back that triplet feel from the intro riff, and it kind of has like a stop and go thing going, and it just has a great groove to it. Tyrant is one that has lots of djent influence in those breakdowns, how it's very stop and go and everything feels very mashed together, but it's super catchy and it gives the song a great stomp. The song also has some cool riffing going on the whole time, and it ends with this like ominous church bell, which I thought was pretty cool. And then the next track, Feeding the Dead, is my favorite song on this record. That opening riff slash breakdown, whatever you want to call it, has a great groove to it. Even though it's pretty simple, it just is super catchy. My favorite aspect of this song, though, is those fittingly haunting, given the title, synthesizers that just kind of float over the whole song. They sound super eerie in that intro over that very catchy riff. And then you get into the verses and it kind of evolves into this synth progression that feels so full of like despair. I love the feeling I get from that progression. And then about a minute in, you get one of the best riffs on the album. The lyrical theme on this song is great as well, and the way it's conveyed is awesome. It just, he sings about this gut-wrenching like just feeling of your life moving at a pace that's too fast for you to keep up with. And the instrumentals and the background synths that I've mentioned like 3 times now really add to that feeling, and it makes this song just reek of despair and raw emotion. This is definitely my favorite song on the record. Michigama features Chad from For the Fallen Dreams, among a couple other artists that I wasn't familiar with. Chad brings his kind of like rap-ish harsh vocals on this song and the verses like he did on the most recent For the Fallen Dreams record, which was a nice touch, a nice change of pace for this album, but honestly this song feels like a bit of filler to me. Just doesn't really add much to the album. It's not bad, it uses that same song formula that we've seen multiple times now, especially on the first 2 tracks that I criticize. It doesn't really have any memorable riffing or memorable breakdowns, although you do get this random like what sounds like a frat guy at the end of the song going, "That's a banger." I thought that was really goofy, really random. So, not sure why that's in there, but I will admit it surprised me. Unfortunately, it's about the only thing about this song that surprised me. And Shell Shock is another one that might be a little bit structurally unadventurous, but I actually really like this song. The clean vocals in the chorus actually, I think, really adds to it, and there hasn't been many clean vocals on this album at all so far. So hearing that was a nice change of pace, and it features, I believe, the singer from The Color Morale, which is another band I'm not familiar with. But the clean vocals in this chorus are great. They have lots of atmospheric elements to them. Again, they got that pounding snare drum that kind of drives it forward and maintains that energy. The ending to the song is also super dynamic in the riffing and the vocals. This song proves that they could still take this formula and make it interesting. And then the closing track, Transmission, is another one I really like. It's pushed forward by this somewhat sugary lead guitar melody that is a little bit overproduced, but it sounds good, and it again separates this song from others on this record. The melodies spun on this song are great, and I kind of wish now that they showed a bit more of these emotional chord progressions and emotional vibes that I get from this song and Feeding the Dead, which are probably my 2 favorite songs on here. And the song is just so creative with its different moods going on the whole time, because you have those sugary guitar melodies and you have these screamed vocals and breakdowns kind of spliced in there, and normally, like, I feel like a song like this would come off as a bit disjointed, but the flow of this song is great, and those sugary guitar melodies sound so, like, wonderfully out of place. It's hard to describe, but a great way to end the album. So overall, despite a few missteps and somewhat of a generic nature in a couple songs, it's a pretty good album. I think what maybe would have elevated this album from good to great status would be if it was arranged a little bit better, if it wasn't as overproduced at times, and if the lyrics weren't as vague as they are sometimes on here. But overall, a good record. I'm going to score this album a 23 out of 30. As always, thank you guys for watching. Please comment below your thoughts on this album if you have heard it. And feel free to subscribe for more rock and metal related content. And until next time, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys later. Peace.